Springbok selection always sparks some debate, and 2025 is no different. Everyone has their picks, but what about the uncapped Springbok players flying under the radar overseas? Today, we're looking at 6 international wildcards that Rassie could call up to the Springbok squad and discuss whether it makes sense to call them up given the insane depth that the Springboks currently have. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Leave this video a like and please hit that subscribe button. Now, I'm going to be discussing these players from least likely to get called up to most likely, so make sure you stick around till the end of the video so that you can give me your full thoughts. Now, the first player I want to speak about is Jeremy Ward. Now, Jeremy Ward plays center. He used to play for the Sharks back in the day. Then he moved overseas and is currently playing for Stade Francais. He has about 20 odd caps for the French side. He's currently 29 and he has represented the under-20 Springbok side. So he was a decent center when he was playing for the Springboks. He is a little bit on the older side of things. The Springboks average age at the moment is about 31 years old. So it is a bit of an aging squad. So I do think Rassie will want to start bringing some younger guys in, especially in that center position. But before we dive into the center positions, why should Rassie be looking overseas to some of these players? Well, my thoughts and my opinion is that we've seen what sort of happened to the local clubs, the Sharks, Stormers, Bulls and Lions in the Champions Cup this year, and there definitely is merit to looking at some of those South African guys who are playing overseas for some big clubs who are beating our local teams in the Champions Cup, in the Challenge Cup. They're obviously getting something right there, and I know one guy doesn't make an entire team, but it is an interesting aspect and conversation to have. Now, why I don't think Jeremy Ward will be brought up to the Springbok squad in that sense position is just because of the depth we have in that Springbok side at the moment. We've got Damien de Allende and Jesse Kriel, 12 and 13, probably the first choice picks. Then we've got Andre Esterhuizen and Lukhanyo. And then we've got some good up-and-coming guys sort of coming through the ranks. In Lorenzo Julius, Ethan Hooker, and Henko van Wyk. Now, 2 of them play for the Sharks. Henko van Wyk plays for the Lions, and I've seen today that he will be staying at the Lions. So I just don't think it makes sense for Rassie to bring up Jeremy Ward given the stock that we have at the moment in those center positions. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Next up is an interesting one, and I haven't seen many people talk about him. It's Jordi Viljoen. Now, if you're not familiar with that name, there is a reason for that, because he was born in Pretoria, and then when he was a child, they ended up moving to New Zealand. So he plays his rugby in New Zealand. He's 21 years old. He's an up-and-coming scrum off, and he plays for the Hurricanes down in New Zealand and in Super Rugby. Now, why you maybe wouldn't have heard of him is because he made his debut last season in 2024 for the Hurricanes and kind of plays second fiddle to Cam Roygaard. Now, if you know Cam Roygaard, you know that he's very, very much within the All Black setup. But Jordi Viljoen is that 21-year-old scrum off that maybe South Africa is lacking at the moment. I mean, if we take a look at our scrum offs, we've got Faf, who's kind of fallen out of favor. We've got Kobus Reinach, who's one of the older ones and will be sort of stepping down in the next couple of years. And then our 2 outs and outs and probably main scrum offs for this year is Grant Williams and Jaden Hendrickse. Grant is 28, Jaden Hendrickse is 24. So Jaden Hendrickse, not as young as 21, but still one of those up-and-coming scrum offs who we can sort of mold into the scrum off we want. And then we also have Morne van den Berg, who is 27. So the Springboks are lacking that one scrum off who's extremely young, who shows a lot of potential and promise. And Jordi Viljoen could be that guy. I mean, he represented New Zealand at the under-20 level. He plays for the Hurricanes and had a great season for them last year. So he's definitely one of those guys that have a lot of promise. The only problem is that he's come out and said that his goal is to play for the All Blacks and not the Springboks. Now, we've seen that sometimes isn't the case. You see Duan van der Merwe, who didn't make it for the Springboks, moved to Scotland. There's a lot of guys who did that. Piers Skuman, you now see Tyron Green, who we'll be getting to later in the video, who might be playing for England next year. So things do change, and I do think Rassie and the Springbok coaching staff should keep an eye on Jordi Viljoen down in New Zealand. Next up, we got Joarno Augustus. Now, we have spoken about him on the channel before. He used to apply his trade for the Stormers a couple of years ago and then moved to the Northampton Saints, and he's now been linked with the move to Ulster. But he is the definition of a Springbok number 8. He kind of reminds me of a Dwayne Vermeulen, a Pierre Spies, a very, very big unit, a very good ball carrier, very physical. So he kind of is the mold that Rassie and the Springboks are looking for. But again, it comes down to the competition in that jersey. I do get the feeling that if he stayed at the Stormers, maybe he would have had a better shot to play for the Springboks, because then maybe guys like Ivan Roos wouldn't have come through. He would be playing against the likes of a Cameron Hanekom. It was very cool to see Ivan Roos and Cameron Hanekom over the weekend kind of go head to head, and kind of we could see who was first and who was second in that pecking order. But how does he get into the Springbok side with the amount of competition in that 8 jersey? I mean, we've got Jasper Visser, we got Ulrich Lowe, we got Cameron Hanekom, we got Kwagga Smith, Mpilo Gumede, Pepsi Buthelezi. There's just so many number 8s in this country. And while I do think Cameron Hanekom will probably play 6 for the Springboks, sort of getting closer to the World Cup, I think Jasper Visser sort of has that number 8 jersey on lock. Ulrich Lowe is sort of the new and up-and-coming 8 that Rassie Rasmus went to last year. So it's just one of those cases of there's just too much competition. Maybe if he stayed at the Stormers, he would have been a good option. But I just don't see him sort of cracking that Springbok call-up, especially because he's 27. And if you look at the roadmaps of a couple of these players, Cameron Hanekom's younger, Ulrich Lowe's younger, Mpilo Gumede, Pepsi Buthelesi's younger. So their roadmaps, they've already sort of been in the Springbok setup, is a lot more clear cut, where Augustus will come in and have to sort of make a name for himself. It just doesn't make too much sense for me, and I think that's why he won't be getting a call up, even though he probably does deserve one. Next up, we got Bernard Janssen van Rensburg. Now, he plays center, he's 28, he played a lot of his local rugby here, and then he moved over, got 50 caps for the London Irish, and now plays for the Bristol Bears. But I think it's a very, very similar case to Jeremy Ward. I'm not going to spend too long on him. I do think he's just been having some very, very good performances in the Premiership, and it was worth sort of mentioning him. Maybe you guys can go look him up and watch him a little bit in the Premiership if you haven't heard about him. But again, he's a big ball carrier, he's a center, but I think it's a very similar case to that of Jeremy Ward, that there's just too much competition. We've got some good young guys coming through. He's 28, so again, I just don't think that roadmap is going to line up too nicely for him in Rassie's plans and sort of moving towards the 2027 Rugby World Cup. Our second to last player we have spoken about on this channel before, and that is Tyrone Green. Now, I feel very, very passionately about Tyrone Green as a player and sort of why he hasn't been called up to the Springboks. Now, if you don't know, he plays fullback. He can also play 10. He used to play 10 at school. I played against him. Not that I know him, just played against him, and I've seen the quality sort of firsthand, so I do know how good he is, and he's just got better and better over time. He played a stint at the Lions, and then in about 2020, he moved over to England to the Harlequins, and he's been absolutely tearing it up in the English Premiership. He wins man of the match awards week after week. He's been in the team of the season in the English Premiership. He's just a really, really solid, good player. But why is he not getting the call up to the Springboks? Now, before I dive into that, I just want to say that it becomes available for England selection in June of this year. So I think this is kind of the last time that Rassie Rasmus can sort of call him up, because if I was Tyrone Green and I didn't get my Springbok call up, I would go play for England. You want to play at the highest level. You want to play international rugby. And I think that's probably what he's going to try and do if Rassie Rasmus doesn't call him up in sort of the next 4 or 5 months. Tyrone, it's a bit of a head scratcher, right? Now, if we look at our depth, we got Damian Willemse, who's probably our number 1 fullback when he's fit, but he has been a little bit injury prone over the last sort of season. You've got Willie Leroux, who is just Willie Leroux, he's just an incredible player, but he is coming to the back end of his career. And then last year, we kind of found Apelele Fassi, who had a phenomenal season for the Springboks last year. He's now injured and he's out for, I don't even know how many months, quite a few months. He's trying to get back into the swing of things, which kind of leaves a door open a little bit, right? Damian Willemse is coming back from injury. Apelele Fassi is coming back from injury. Willy's sort of getting to that last phase of his career. So there is an opportunity for Rassie Rasmus to call up Tyrone Green. He did it last year in the form of Kieran Horn, right? Kieran Horn, I think, got one or two caps for the Springboks last year. And in my opinion, I think Tyrone Green's better than Kieran Horn. So why did Rassie call up Kieran Horn and Tyrone Green? I'm not sure. I think Tyrone Green's in the prime of his life. He's 26, 27 this year. By the 2027 Rugby World Cup, he'll be 29, 30, which is exactly the age that Rassie Rasmus likes his players to be at a World Cup. So it's a big head scratcher for me. And I think maybe one of my hot takes for this year is that Tyrone Green does get a call up, especially with the injuries to Damian Willemse, Apelele Fassi, and Willie sort of exiting the team in the next couple of years. It's a big call. Obviously, we have Q and Horn, but I would love to see Tyrone Green in a Springbok jersey. And lastly, we've got Marnus van der Merwe, and I think he's the most likely to be called up because he got called up for a Springbok alignment camp last season. He plays hooker. When he got that call up, he was playing for the Cheetahs, but has since moved over to the Scarlets in Wales. I think he will get called up for one reason, because we are lacking that third choice hooker at the moment. Now, there's no secrets that Malcolm Marx and Bongi Nambe are sort of that 1 and 2 pairing. But Rassie Rasmus was experimenting last year with that third choice option. Was it Johan Grobler? Was it Jan-Hendrik Wessels? Marco van Staden even played hooker for a little bit for the Springboks. So Rassie's still trying to find that third choice hooker. And I mean, Malcolm is still going to be good for a couple of years, but Bongi is sort of getting to the back end of his career. Maybe he has one more World Cup in him. So I think it is important for the Springboks to find that third choice hooker. And Marnus van der Merwe could be that guy. He'll also be the perfect age when the 2027 Rugby World Cup comes around. And we know how much Rassie Erasmus loves that sort of 30 to 31-year-old when the Rugby World Cup comes around. So I think he's probably going to at least go to another lineman camp. I wouldn't be surprised if he plays against the likes of a Georgia or an Italy this year and kind of experiment with him in that third choice hooker role. So that wraps it up. 6 overseas internationals that could potentially get capped for the Springboks this season. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. If you haven't, please leave this video a like, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take it easy. Peace.